If you're a drummer looking for the most realistic practice solution, then this video is for you. Alright, so I've moved around quite a bit over the last 6 or 7 years. I've lived in houses, I lived in apartments, and now I currently live in a townhouse. Apartments, I would get noise complaints even for just playing guitar. So depending on the place you live at, you might still get noise complaints with this kit. This isn't supposed to be the quietest solution. It's supposed to be quiet enough to get away with playing in an environment where a full kit would just be way too loud. But it's not quiet enough where you're going to be playing at midnight and no one's going to hear you. It's still something you're going to want to play, mostly during the day, but I think most people should be able to get away with using a kit like I have created for various situations. So a little bit of background to what led me to this. I've looked at a lot of different electric drum kits. The only ones that really appealed to me were just way out of my budget. To me, unless you're spending thousands of dollars, an electric drum kit just doesn't cut it for me. I wanted something that's going to be as close as possible to feeling like an acoustic drum kit without the noise. It's very common to convert an acoustic kit to an electric kit, which is kind of what I've done. But I have a slight twist on mine, which is it's more of a hybrid kit with low volume cymbals, but not converting the low volume cymbals to an electric cymbal, which I've seen a lot of people do. My goal is I wanted to still have the feel of the cymbals. For some reason, the cymbals are the biggest deal breaker for me. The rubber pads just feel like rubber pads and cymbals aren't rubber. And then the low volume cymbals, after you get all the deadening in them and you put the piezos on there and all this stuff, it still doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't ring enough. There's not enough give, and I would miss that too much. So, and they're also expensive. So I've also kind of thought about budget in this project as well, where usually the most expensive part of an electric drum kit is the cymbals. That's when you're converting an acoustic to an electric kit. There's a little bit more of a process to it besides just with the drums. You just buy mesh heads, put some triggers on, and you're good to go. With the acoustic cymbals, if you buy them pre-made, they're very expensive. And if you make them yourself, they're a little bit more finicky because you have to deaden them, like I was saying before, which ruins the feel. But you have to do that, or else you're just going to get double triggering like crazy. And then if you want to have dual zone, which is kind of at least very important for the ride, that's a whole nother thing. And then the hi-hat, the opening and closing of the hi-hat is a whole nother process, which can be done. I've looked into that, and I've seen devices you can buy that you don't even need to have the bottom hat. I can't really speak to because I've never used that before, but I needed the cymbals to feel as natural as possible, just at a lower volume. And with so many low volume options out there, I figured just go with that and build the kit around that, because cymbals don't carry, they're higher frequencies, right? The frequency range of a cymbal is typically, let's say, 200 hertz to 20,000 hertz. 200 hertz is not that low. That's the lowest they usually go. 200 hertz, you're not going to really hear that through walls. So you could even probably get away with playing actual acoustic cymbals if you have some self-control, which I don't, so I'm not even going to try that. But you could probably get away with playing actual acoustic cymbals in some environments like the one I'm in now, which is a townhome. I have neighbors on either side of me, but not below me. So below you is where they're going to hear the thump of the kick and the lower frequencies. Still, the lower frequencies, even in this situation, the kick and the drums are going to be crazy loud. That's going to carry through the walls because it resonates. But cymbals, you don't need to worry about as much. Now, if you have roommates or you're living with family members or whatever, yeah, they're gonna hear the cymbals. Like, this solution that I've created is not dead quiet. And like I said, it's still something you're gonna want to play only during the day. But I had that in mind when building this, and I wanted just to compromise. I wanted something that I could play, when I come home from work, play for an hour or two before it gets too late, and that's enough for me. And then when I do go to a practice space or rehearse with my band or whatever, I have a full kit there. This is just something to, in between those times, which isn't that often anymore. I don't practice on a weekly basis drum-wise with a band. So if I didn't have something like this, I could go a long time without playing drums, which is unfortunate. And I've done that before, but pretty much every place I've lived, I've either had a place to go to play drums or could just play drums in the house because I was living in a house. So this is something that hopefully won't be an issue for the rest of my life, because I hope to have a house someday and I'll fully build my studio. But as of right now, I want a practice solution that I can play, and I've had it for a couple weeks now and it's been a blast. And I could already tell my drumming has improved, because with drums, as a lot of you drummers know, it's not as much of you forget how to play, but it's the endurance, right? It's keeping up the muscles to play for a long period of time. And if you play a show, like I'm playing a show tomorrow, which I will be on drums for, it's a long set. We have a long set, and if I haven't played drums in a month since our last show, then I'm not going to have the endurance to play well that long. So yeah, just being able to do that is a blast, and I can't get myself to practice on something that doesn't feel right to me and isn't fun. And this is a blast to play. So let me get into kind of the breakdown of about roughly the cost, because I know that's probably a concern. And like I said before, the electric kits that are fun to play are like $4,000. That's not really obtainable for me, and I'm sure it's not obtainable for most of you, especially if you're considering converting an acoustic kit to an electric kit. So a breakdown kind of price-wise. Now, this has been spread out through so many years, so bear with me here, but I'll kind of try and give you an idea of what it cost me to build this. So this was my first drum kit I ever bought. It's just a starter drum kit I bought off my friend's brother, who is no longer playing anymore, in high school. So this was like 10 years ago, and it's just a cheap Ludwig accent kit, right? And I've used that for many years, and it's served me well. But I finally decided to upgrade and buy a decent kit, which hopefully I'll be putting in videos in the future. I had the mindset of, this kit's falling apart, the snare doesn't work anymore, half the bolts don't stay on, all the cymbals have been replaced, the hardware had been replaced. So basically, the kit was to the point where it wasn't worth anything anymore. So that's why I decided, hey, I'm going to go into this with the mindset of just converting this, and once I'm done with it, I'll either dump it or try and sell it for parts or whatever. But really, you could convert this back to an acoustic kit if you wanted to. With just the only thing that's permanent on this kit that I've done is I ended up super gluing the hose around the rim of the drums. Well, I'll get to that later. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked, but back to the budgeting. So the drums, I paid $200 for that kit. I'm sure you can find something on Craigslist or whatever, what Facebook Marketplace or something like that. It doesn't matter. It could sound like complete garbage. All you need is the shells. Okay, so let's say $200, but you're going to want to replace them with mesh heads. I had these mesh heads kind of given to me as a gift, but I've seen them online they're just kind of your basic ones. They're Tama, like just 1-ply mesh heads for around $100. And that's where I'm starting at. Now, I would like to upgrade the heads with multiple ply. So there's single ply, there's dual ply, and I've seen triple ply as well. There's different types of materials, and the better ones you get, the better it's going to feel, the more realistic it's going to feel. These mesh heads tend to be a little bit bouncy. Later on, I'll talk about some tips, and I'll mention how you can kind of help that a little bit. So we'll say we're at 300 now. Then to convert those to electric, you're going to need triggers, right? So the cheapest solution that I found is the D-Drum red triggers. This is like the cheapest one. I found them on sale for like, I think they're like $50. So for the whole set. So that's like $50 right there. They are single zone, so that might be a problem for some people, especially on the snare. Most electric drum kits come with dual zone, so you'll have a different sound for rim shots. That's just going to trigger a different sample. I probably will upgrade the snare for sure. I'm planning on the next thing I do will be swap out the mesh head for a nicer mesh head and the trigger, and get a dual zone trigger. Right now it's a single zone. The toms, I don't really care to have dual zone on the toms. Same with the kick. And I don't think I'll really need to ever upgrade those in any way. It will probably just be the snare, because that's something that is you're hitting constantly, and it's very sensitive. You're going to be wanting to do little rolls. They just hook onto the edge of the rim, and then you can they have a 1/4 inch out that you could plug in a module, which brings us to the next thing, the module. This is where it could be really expensive. Modules, you could drop $1,000 on a module for sure. And that's what you're paying for a lot of times with the high-end Roland kits and stuff like that is the module, because they have a ridiculous amount of sounds. They have double layer, they have crazy layering, and there's just all these different features that you get from them. All I really care about is just, I wanted the cheapest thing I could possibly find with MIDI out. The reason being is all I need is a couple good sounding kits. Something that will work when I'm just like, hey, I came home from work. Oh, I don't want to mess around with anything. Whatever's on here works. Oh, there's a sound. Let's go with it. It has that. It has sounds. I don't need hundreds of sounds. I don't. I just need something that I don't change the sound of my drum kit every time I play. And I get that's one of the benefits of electric kit is that you can have all these different sounding kits, and that's super cool. But for me, I just needed something to play for practice that felt realistic. And this module does that job, and it has MIDI out. So if I did want to do some crazy multi-layered drums with super realistic sounds, I can go MIDI out into my computer and pull up, get Easy Drummer. Then you have super, super high quality kits with tons of layers that are great. And all I'm using the module for is just to send MIDI. So why spend $1,000 on something like that? So I found this module on eBay for like $50. It's just like and it was brand new. I don't know if you could find them anymore, but I forget the name, but I'll put it up here so you could see it. Let's just round it up to 100 just to be generous. So now we're at what? 300, 350 for the triggers, another 100, so we're at 450 right here. And yeah, it's a Alesis module from like their lowest tier. Then for the cymbals, I found some super cheap low volume cymbals. I think it was on like Alibaba, I want to say, or AliExpress. I originally wanted one that was made of brass because those sound better. I decided that probably not worth spending a bunch of money on cymbals if I'm trying to be low budget, because then it's just going to be like, well, I just doubled my budget. You could easily double your budget on cymbals. So I found these that with a full set for like $150. Now that might be hard to find now. Let's just round it up and say $200. So now we're at $650. And I have the low volume cymbals, the module, the triggers, the mesh heads, and the acoustic kit that I converted. Now we could stop right there and you got everything you need. If you want to go a little bit further, which I did, I found some hose line that I cut, then glued around the edge of the rims. I bought that on Amazon. That I could actually put a link in the description for or something if you want to use that. But that wasn't very much. I'll put the price here because I can actually look that up, but I want to say it was like $20. The one other thing, which is something you're definitely going to want to do, I was having issues figuring out how I was going to mount the module, because it kind of came with a mount, but it was just, the diameter is just way too big, and you could tell it was meant to fit into a specific part on the electric kit because it was a part from an electric kit. So what I did was I just measured the radius of the module holder that was coming out that it had attached to it, and measured the diameter of the hi-hat stand, and I found I could probably use for some of my video stuff. And it was actually like a camera holder, a camera clamp, and it goes up to 1.5 inches, which is just about what I needed. I needed about 1 inch. It was like $30. It holds like 15 pounds or something, which is plenty. I mean, it almost looks like it was supposed to be like that. Like it fits it perfect. So that was lucky. And I could also put the link in the description for that as well. You're probably not going to use the same module, but it might work for whatever module you decide on. $200 for the kit, $100 for the mesh heads, $50 for the triggers. Let's round those up though, because I think they're more expensive now, and I found those on sale. So we'll round that up. So $100, $200 for the cymbals, $100 for the module, $700, and roughly $50 for those other little accessories. So $750 total. Now that's not nothing. And affordable can be considered many different things by different people. But I think looking at the options out there, I think $750 for what I have here is unbeatable. I mean, it's fantastic. I don't think, even if I spent an extra $400 or $500, I still don't think I could find something pre-made of this quality. One of the big things was the full-size heads, right? I wanted a 14-inch snare, right? That's the standard size, and anything smaller than that feels weird to me. Maybe 1 inch smaller, I could deal with a 13-inch, but a lot of these are like 10, 11-inch snares. Or if you're talking real budget, maybe if you spend a little more, you could get a 12-inch snare for under $1,000. Like, that's the biggest snare you're going to get for under $1,000 is maybe a 12-inch. The first kit that would be relatively comparable, I recently went to Guitar Center and played Elisa's Strike Pro again, just to after I built this kit to kind of compare. And that's a $1,700 kit. And that was the only one I was like, maybe if I saved up for a while, I could buy that kit if it met all my needs and it was just perfect. It might be worth it instead of going through the trouble of building this myself and doing all the research and finding these items. But after playing it again and and at the, within the same couple hours, like I went to Guitar Center, played the Lisa Strike Pro, came home, played my kit that I made, and I liked my kit way more, significantly more, especially the cymbals. Goes back to there, and yeah, the Strike Pro is going to be quieter. So if that's more important to you, like you're just trying to get as quiet as possible, then maybe go for something like that. But I just wanted it to be quiet enough where I can get away with playing it without it really being, you could still hear it in the next room, but you're not going to hear it outside, right? That's kind of where I wanted to be. Not like, hey, if I close my bedroom door, no one's going to hear me out the bedroom door. No, that wasn't my goal. My goal was like, hey, during the day when people are out doing things, I can play this kit. As long as you're not like right in the next room, you're not going to really hear it. Now, a lot of what you're paying for the Strike Pro is the module, and the module on that thing is incredible. If that's another thing that's important to you, maybe go in that direction. Module is not important to me. All I needed it to do was make sounds. The feel is my top priority. That was number one, is I want to feel like I'm playing an acoustic kit, but just at a lower volume. This is an issue with a lot of because I play guitar as well, and there's an issue with guitar amps where you kind of have to get them to a sweet spot, and that spot is pretty loud. And there's a lot of companies that try and capture that and model it, or, there's attenuators, or there's other situations where it's like you just have to bring it down to a certain level, and it does. It's quieter, and it's, technically the same sound, but it's just not quite there. It's missing something. It's not, the feel isn't there. There's nothing like cranking an amp and feeling the feedback and not having to listen to your strings over it, like, so there's a compromise with volume, right? No matter what, you're trading quality and feel for volume. And I'm not going to pretend like this kit feels identical to playing an acoustic drum kit. Like, it's just not the same. But as far as anything relative to that volume, you're not going to find anything better than this. That's what I truly believe. I've spent a lot of time researching and trying out different things, and this is the best solution. So one thing I would like to mention that I'm not completely happy about is I still get some double triggering. For those who aren't familiar, double triggering is when you hit the drum once, but the vibrations of the drum head trigger it again. So when you're listening back to the sample that's triggered, it's played multiple times. And it can cause like a phase issue because it's playing an identical sample so close together that it makes it sound bad. And I have noticed that quite a bit at first, and I have kind of resolved it, not completely, but here's some tips if you are going to do this, will help you with double triggering. Tune the head low. This not only helps with double triggering, but it actually helps the feel significantly better. So tune your mesh heads low, because it will help with double triggering and will make it feel less bouncy and more realistic, like an actual acoustic drum head. So I think that about wraps it up. I'm sure I'm gonna forget some things, so I am planning to do a part 2, which will include anything that I might have forgot to mention, as well as updates on it. So I probably won't make that video until I've done some kind of changes to the drum kit, like upgrading the mesh heads or the triggers, and I can then give you my thoughts on that and also how the drum kit has held up. So if that's something that you would like to see, please subscribe and stay tuned for that video in the future. If you have any questions that I may have not addressed, please feel free to leave them in the comments and I will try and get to them as fast as possible, and maybe someone else might know the answers to some things. And yeah, that's it. Keep on jamming.